student of Knowledge TV.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We concluded last week's lesson by looking at those things which, if found, ghusl becomes compulsory and farz. And I mentioned that if semen or money was to come out, and money and semen is stored somewhere in our backs, so if it was to come out, and when it comes out, it gushes out, and it comes out with excitement and shahwa, I mentioned ghusl becomes compulsory and farz. Now there was one masla, or there was one point which a brother afterwards reminded me, and that was with regards to masturbation. That if somebody, say for example, masturbated, and then the semen which comes out, does it become necessary and compulsory for that individual to do ghusl? Or the semen which comes out, do you consider that to be madhi, hence ghusl not becoming compulsory and farz, but wuzu becoming compulsory and farz? Now before we look at the exact ruling, just a few things with regards to masturbation. And this is like a thing which is happening a lot within our society, and many Muslim youth are actually involved in this. And the reason why they are involved is because when they go out, they see women, they see people, and so on. And by looking at them, a person, he develops lust, shahwa, and desire. So if that person doesn't have a wife to fulfill his desires, then the way he fulfills his desires is through an unlawful and haram way, through masturbation, which in Arabic is called istimna bil yad, and this is something which is haram and unlawful. And it is mentioned in the Holy Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the qualities, the awsaf of a believer. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that one of the qualities and characteristics of a believer is وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ, that a believer, he protects his private parts. إِلَّا عَلَىٰ أَزْوَاجِهِمْ أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ غَيْرُ مَلُومِينَ. Besides his wives and his slave girls, that he fulfills his desires with them, and that is something which is not malamat, meaning فَإِنَّهُمْ غَيْرُ مَلُومِينَ, he will not be considered sinful, he will not be considered fasik or a fajir because of that. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنِ ابْتَغَى وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ, that a person, if he fulfills his desires, not with his wife, not with his slave girl, but through another way, such as masturbation, such as some other kind of activities, then that will be something which is haram. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ, such a person is away from the straight path, and such a person has exceeded the boundaries of the Sharia. Now there are also hadiths as well, but many of the hadiths regarding masturbation are quite weak. But from the hadiths we can derive some severe punishment for those who masturbate. And there is a hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that there are 7 people that on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not look at, and nor will he purify them. And one of them is a person who would masturbate. Now you may be thinking, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not look at them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not speak to them. That's not a severe punishment. But when you actually analyze that particular hadith, emotionally, when someone does not speak to you, that in itself is a punishment. Just say, for example, you've got a teacher, someone who you would look up to, someone who you love, and so on. And just say for some reason a teacher doesn't want to speak to you because you've done something to the teacher, that's why he doesn't want to know you, he doesn't want to speak to you. So imagine like your teacher, he's walking past you and he doesn't even acknowledge you, he doesn't even recognize you, he doesn't even speak to you, how emotionally you will feel bad. So this is what will happen on the Day of Judgment to those people who masturbate, that on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not even look at them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not even acknowledge them. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not willing to acknowledge them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not willing to look after them, then how will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive their sins? Now let's going back to the masla which is in front of us. And that is that if somebody masturbates, does ghusl become compulsory or not? So the masla is that yes, ghusl does become compulsory. Because if you look at the definition of the ejaculation of semen, it has to be that it comes out, it spurts out, it gushes out, and also when it comes out with desire and shahwa. And as you can see with masturbation, when a person is doing such an activity, then when it comes out again, it comes out like he's having intercourse, like the semen spurts out, it gushes out, and on top of that, there is also shahwat and desire. So therefore, masturbation, if somebody was to masturbate, then ghusl will become compulsory and ghusl will be first. Okay, now the next section which we are going to start in Quduri here is with regards to water. And many of the rulings which is in front of us is not applicable in this day and age. So therefore, I'm not going to look at each and every single ruling in detail. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick out the main cream from this particular section and just forward it to you. You know, those rulings in particular which is applicable for this day and age. Now, the first ruling which we need to look at is, just remember rule number 1, this is like a base ruling, that wherever there is flowing water, irrespective of what impurity falls inside that flowing water will always remain dark and pure. So just say you've got a river, and just say if somebody was to urinate inside that river, even then that water, that stream, that flowing river will be considered dark and pure. And you could do wuzu with it afterwards. And the reason why is that because it flows, then when some impurity or something najas falls inside, then because of the flowing water, the water will kind of wash away and gush away somewhere else, and some clean water will come. So therefore, flowing water, wherever it is, whether it's a river or a stream or something, as long as the water is flowing, then that water is pure and dark. Even to the extent that when you look at the water, you see like it's all black and, brown and funny color and so on. Even then, that water is considered pure and dark. Unless you could actually see, like when you somewhere, you some water, and then actually you pick up the water and you actually see there's some impurity inside. And that's obviously that will become impure, because that will then mean that even though it's a flowing river, there's so much inside the river that it's not washing away. So then you can't use it. But just generally speaking, if it's a river, any impurity which falls into you're allowed. So that is rule number 1. Second rule is that any still water, any area or pool of water where the water is still, so but the area is that water or that area, the masla is that if that pool of water is 10 by 10 long, meaning 10 meters in length and 10 meters in width long, then that water will also be considered dark and pure to use. Just say, for example, a lake which is 10 meters long, 10 meters long, then you could do wuzu with that particular water. Just say, for example, a swimming pool, which is a very big swimming pool, again 10 meters long, 10 meters wide. Then, if any bit of impurity falls in, the traces of that impurity cannot be seen in the water, then you will be able to do wuzu with that. So that is like the first 2 base rulings, very straightforward. Flowing water, you're allowed to do wuzu, and similarly, waters in lakes and other areas, other pools, tanks, and so on, which is more than 10 by 10. If no impurity, no traces of impurity can be, you are allowed to do wuzu from those 2 areas of. Situation is an area which is less than 10 by 10. So for example, some people, they may at home do a ghusl or do a bath bucket. You get a bucket of water and then you put the water inside. Some people use that to do ghusl. People, they, for example, go for Jamaat, then they use a bucket to do ghusl. So we're talking about those kind of little, small amount of water, like a bucket of water, a jug of water. That's where some rulings need to be discussed, so we could highlight whether it is permissible for us to use that water or not. Now, if it's a small pool of water, like water in a jug, water in a glass, water in a bucket, if any impurity falls inside, automatically that water, irrespective, drop. See, the water is impure. And, okay? See, and blood is different because obviously, as Allah says, that we do not compel people beyond their capacity and beyond their capability. But if you've seen a bucket of water or some blood fall inside, you've seen some semen fall inside, you've seen, some animals fall inside, you won't use that particular water, and you've seen someone actually put some alcohol, so you won't be able to use that. Even though when you look at the water, you can't see any traces of alcohol or blood or whatever it has fallen inside, you're not allowed to use the water. The second situation is, the second ruling here regarding, but we're going to elaborate a bit slightly, and that is that or a pure object, a jami, falls inside that water, then what will be the status of that particular water? For example, at home, you're having a bath, you're using one of those buckets and a jug. So let's say you've got a bucket full of water and a bar of soap falls inside that water. So we got soap here, which is solid, but it's pure. So it's not like before something impure falls in, that's it, it's impure. What's fallen here is a bar of soap, which is pure. Now the question is, use that water or not? Now the test which we apply here, if something dark or pure object falls inside water, is we see whether the flowness and the of the water disappears or not. The test which we will apply. One of the qualities about water is that it's nice and soft and it flows. When you put water on your body, then it kind of flows away. It's very soft. But if you were to say put something like juice or drink on your body, then it doesn't flow and nor is it soft. But that's one of the qualities of water, that it flows and it's soft. Now, if there a bar of soap falls inside that water, and if that bar of soap stays in the water for a while, what happens is that slowly that water gets this kind of like mushy color. It's like, say, a foam bath, like when you put a foam bath into a tub of water, then what happens is that after a while it kind of gets a bit spongy and that kind of. The water goes a bit thick and it loses that softness and it loses that flowness, then you won't, for wuzu, you won't be able to use it for his ghusl. Just generally speaking, if for example, if a bar of soap did fall inside water and then you pick it out straight away, then because it's only been there for, it's not going to affect the water that much. So therefore, in that situation, you'll be able to use the water. But if it's been there for a while, to such an extent that the softness of the water, the flowness of the water disappears, it becomes all mushy and so on, you will not be able to use that particular water for wuzu, you will not be able to use that particular water for ghusl. Here, is again something which is spark and pure. So you got again a bowl of water or a bucket of water. But this time what happens is a pure and a spark liquid falls inside that water. So just for example, you've got a jug of water and a spark and a pure liquid falls. That liquid which falls inside this jug of water, if it's got two qualities. If one of the quality of that liquid is seen, appears in the water, you'll be able to use that water for wuzu or for ghusl. So I'll give you an example. Just say you had a jug of water and then some milk falls inside that jug of water. Now when we analyze or when we look at milk, milk's got two things, two qualities. Number one is that it's got a color and it doesn't have a smell. It's got color and taste. So therefore, if a drop of milk was put inside that jug of water or just a bit more than a drop, now you need to ask yourself that if one of the qualities of milk is being shown in that jug of water or not. Just say, for example, you put the water and now the water has changed its color and it's become now whitish. So therefore, you won't be able to use that water for wuzu and ghusl. Or just say, for example, fell inside some water. When you then taste that water, it tastes. Then situation you won't be able to use that water. Okay, so it depends if the liquid which has fallen has got two qualities. So if one of the quality is being shown in the water, you won't be able to use that for wuzu or ghusl. The next angle to look at it is if a liquid which, if it was to fall inside water, if it has then if two of these qualities are shown or appears in the water, then you won't be able to do wuzu with that water. So just say, for example, you've got again a jug of water and this mistake or intentionally he puts some Coke or some kind of like fizzy drinks or some kind of orange juice inside that water. Now if we look at all the fizzy drinks or orange juice, whatever, it's got three qualities. You've got the color. Let's take example Coke. So it's got the color, it's got the smell, and it's also got the taste. So just say, for example, there's a jug of water here. Somebody puts, say, like half a liter of Coke inside. So obviously, in that situation, at least two of the qualities will probably appear or will probably be shown in that jug of water. Probably the color may taste, probably the taste may change, probably the smell will change as well. So because of these reasons, in that situation, you won't be able to use that. However, just say, for example, quality changed. So just say somebody put some Coke inside, a bit of Coke. Only the color changes, but the smell, it doesn't smell like it doesn't smell like Coke, and nor does it taste like Coke. Just say slightly the color change, then you'll be able to use that for wuzu and ghusl. So just keep that in mind when it comes to pure liquid. That if pure spark liquid was to fall, if the liquid's got two qualities, then if one of the quality is shown in the water, then you use it. However, the liquid like fizzy drinks, juice, and so on has got three qualities. So if two of those qualities or more are in a jug of water, then you won't be able to use it for wuzu and ghusl. Okay, now the next section which I'm going to start is also linked with water, but this is more important and obviously is applicable for us and for everyone in this day and age. And the section which I'm going to start is called Al-Ma'ul Musta'mal, water. Water. Now there are two ways, or there are two situations when water becomes used. Now before I look at the two situations, Just a couple of terminologies here. You may have come across these before. Number one is Hadath Asghar, and number two is Hadath Akbar. I'm just mentioning it now because the next few pages are just going to be based on these terminologies. So number one is Hadath Asghar, and number two is Hadath Akbar. And Hadath Asghar in English basically means that a person who is in need of wuzu. So like for example, a person who's gone to the toilet, he's urinated, he broke his wuzu somehow. So that person is in need of wuzu. So you call him Hadath Asghar, which some scholars describe as light type of impurity or in need of wuzu or in a minor state of impurity. And then the second category of hadath is called Hadath Akbar, the major impurity. And when we say Hadath Akbar, we mean that that person is in need of a ghusl. So he's had a wet dream, say, or he's had sexual intercourse with his wife. So that person is in need of a bath and a ghusl. So you call that state and that scenario Hadath Akbar. Now the text, as we're going to look at later, describes Maye Musta'mal or used water as that water which has been used to eradicate either Hadath Asghar or Hadath Akbar. Meaning that water which was used to make a person clean for namaz, i.e. that water which he used for wuzu, or that water which he used after having a wet dream or sexual intercourse or when he was having a farz ghusl. So that water which he used, that water is called Maye Musta'mal, used water. So that is one scenario where the situation of used water can arise. So basically what I'm trying to say is that any water which you do after wuzu, any water after ghusl, after farz ghusl this is, then that water will be considered as used. And the second scenario when a water can be considered used is, for example, you are clean from before. You're bar wuzu. You're in the state of wuzu from before. But then what happens is that, as we're going to look at later on, that is actually mustahab, that if you are in the state of wuzu, to actually redo a wuzu again for the next namaz. So he's already got wuzu, say he read Zuhr. Obviously nowadays Salah are very close together. So he read Zuhr Salah, he's got wuzu, and Asr is about to start, so he thought to himself, I might as well do wuzu again. So he does wuzu again. So that second time when he did wuzu, he wasn't getting rid of any impurity or hadath. But because that second time when he did wuzu, he did it with the intention of qurba. Qurba meaning with the intention of thawab and reward. So therefore that water also becomes used water, that water also becomes Maye Musta'mal. So what we can gather from what I've just explained the last couple of minutes or so is that Maye Musta'mal or used water arises either the water which you used for wuzu, the water which you used for ghusl, and also you are already clean and then you did wuzu with the intention of thawab and reward, then that leftover water is used water, Maye Musta'mal, and as we're going to look at later, you cannot use it again for wuzu and ghusl. Now from this we can understand is that, just say for example you had a jug of water or a bowl of water. Sometimes when you go to people's house, before you eat something, they bring a jug of water and then they let you wash your hands there, and then it goes to the next person, then it goes to the next person, and so on. So once somebody posed this question, that isn't this Maye Musta'mal? Like a person, he comes with a bowl of water, and then I washed my hands, say for example, and then in that same bowl of water, then gave it to someone else, and then he washed his hands. So somebody asked this question that, isn't this used water and Maye Musta'mal? So the answer is that no, it's not Maye Musta'mal, because I'm not actually doing wuzu from this bowl of water, am I? I haven't actually, when I put my hand inside, I haven't done it with the intention to get rid of Hadath Asghar and Hadath Akbar. I haven't done it with the intention of qurba, like I haven't done wuzu from it. So therefore, that kind of passing the bowl of water around, even though 10 people may have been using it from the same bowl, then there's nothing wrong with it. It's not considered impure, it's not considered Maye Musta'mal or anything like that. Now, what is the order of Ma'i Musta'mal, or what is the hukum or ruling of Ma'i Musta'mal? So we just derived that leftover water or any water which falls from your body after wuzu or ghusl, any wuzu which you've done after already being in the state of wuzu, that is called Ma'i Musta'mal. But what is the ruling of Ma'i Musta'mal? Now the scholars have written, or the masla is, that used water or Ma'i Musta'mal, you can use, or I'll start off with you cannot use Ma'i Musta'mal to attain purification and taharat again. So just say, for example, with used water, just say the water which you used to do wuzu, so then after it fell from your body, you then gathered it up in a little container. So that water afterwards, you would not be able to do wuzu with it again. You would not be able to use it to have a bath, say, for example. So you can't use that particular water to attain purification or to make yourself clean and pak again. However, more importantly, Ma'i Musta'mal or used water, it's not napak. It's not impure. So therefore, if that used water was to fall on your kurta or on your jubba, on your trousers, then it doesn't render that area impure and napak. And again, this is quite important. Sometimes when we're doing wuzu, I think this wuzu area is okay, but there are some masajids where the seats are very, very close together when you're doing wuzu. So what happens is that two people are sitting together, and sitting together next to each other. So if I'm doing wuzu, sometimes what happens is that the leftover or the dropping of, say, the wuzu sometimes falls onto his trousers and so on. So again, this also happened with me as well before, that I was doing wuzu, and then some of the water from my arms or from my face splashed on that person's trousers. So he said, oh, you made this impure and so on. So again, I had to explain that, no, it's Ma'i Musta'mal used water, it's not impure. So you can't use it again, fair enough, for wuzu and ghusl. So we understood that. But fi nafsihi, in itself, Ma'i Musta'mal is not impure, it's not napak. So therefore, if it does come on your clothes or goes onto somebody else's clothes, it doesn't make that person's trousers, it doesn't make that person's body impure and napak. So Ma'i Musta'mal, it's pure. Even to the extent that if we want, from the leftover water or from the water which has dripped from your arms and your face, if you want, you could gather it in a glass and then drink it. It's pure. You could drink it. If you want, you can use it for washing purposes and so on. But what you can't use it for is you can't reuse that water for wuzu and ghusl again. Okay, so that is the masla with regards to used water and Ma'i Musta'mal. If you have a look at the text here, Imam Quduri rahmatullahi says that wa amma al-ma'ul musta'mal, as for Ma'i Musta'mal or used water, la yajuzu isti'maluhu fi taharatil ahdath, that it is not permissible to use Ma'i Musta'mal or used water to get rid of ahdath, i.e. to get rid of hadath, impurities, whether it is hadath asghar or hadath akbar. And then he goes on to describe what is Ma'i Musta'mal and used water, and the author says that wal ma'ul musta'mal kullu ma'in uzila bihi aw istu'mila fil badani ala wajhi al-qurba. So Ma'i Musta'mal, used water, is every water which has been used to get rid of hadath and impurity. So whether it's light impurities, hadath asghar, i.e. for wuzu, or whether it's hadath akbar for ghusl, or it has been used fil badani, on your body, ala wajhil qurba, with the intention of reward or thawab. I gave the example that you're already in the state of wuzu, but then you do wuzu again with the intention of reward and thawab. So therefore that second time you did wuzu, that water which comes from the water which drips, then that will also be considered Ma'i Musta'mal and used water. And as we looked at above, you won't be able to use it to get rid of hadath asghar or hadath akbar, but you can use it for other purposes such as drinking, such as cleaning your clothes, such as for istinja, even to the extent that you can actually use Ma'i Musta'mal to get rid of blood. Just for example, there's some drops of blood on your trousers, you can actually use Ma'i Musta'mal, used water, to actually get rid of that. Okay? So what you cannot use Ma'i Musta'mal for is to use it for wuzu and ghusl again. Another kind of question which somebody asked me which is kind of linked with my mustaqmal. I'll just mention it to you guys. And that is that sometimes what happens is that people, when they're doing wuzu at home, sometimes they may have this kind of boiler or this kind of system where there's hot water coming out from their bathroom taps. From the basin, there's always hot water. Some people, they may have this kind of boiler, there's always hot water. So sometimes the water is so hot that it's impossible for them to do wuzu. So the question somebody asked is that, would I be able to mix the cold water, hot water, put it in a basin, and then do wuzu, like basically use the basin as a bowl, and then do wuzu from the basin or from the sink, and then do wuzu from there? So the answer to that will be that it will be permissible, but you have to make sure that when you are washing your face, that the drops of water face doesn't fall back into the basin again. Because if it does, then that will become my musta'mal, used water, and then you won't be able to then use it for the other parts of your body. So you can actually use water from the basin, but you have to make sure that you don't actually, the drops of water from the face doesn't go back into the basin or from the sink. If you were to wash it somewhere else, say next to the bath, say you then, making sure that the ma'i musta'mal and the used water is falling there, that's okay. But if you are kind of letting the ma'i musta'mal, used water, fall back into the basin and sink, then there's no point, because that will become ma'i musta'mal and used water, hence you won't be able to use it to clean yourself afterwards. Okay, now the next section which we're going to start, وَكُلُّ إِحَابٍ دُبِغَ فَقَدْ طَهُرَ, is something which in Arabic is known as dibagat, if a dal, dibagat. And in English, it's called tanning. And this is a practice, or the sunnah, you could say, of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, once he was in a journey, and he saw a skin of an animal. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told the Sahabas that if you had tanned this particular hide, then that hide would have become pure and pak. Now, what does tanning mean? Basically, any animal which has not been slaughtered Islamically. So just say it's an animal which has not been slaughtered Islamically, then the skin of the animal, you can cut it, and if you were to put some kind of chemicals inside that skin, so that the impurity or najas or filth which is inside that skin, it can then go away, or it can then be eradicated, then that skin will be considered pure and pak to use. You can use it to make carpets, you can use it to make rugs, you can even use it to make coats. All these kind of things will be permissible and lawful. I'll just elaborate on this ruling a bit more. Just imagine, number one, the first ruling is that any animal which has been slaughtered Islamically. Now, what I mean by slaughtered Islamically is there are three conditions which need to be found for an animal to be considered halal and lawful in Islam. Number one is that the 4 veins which are in the throat, they are cut with a sharp tool such as a knife. Number 2, the second condition is that the slaughterer must say Bismillah before he slaughters. And the third condition is that the slaughterer must be a Muslim, and obviously if that person happens to be practicing, then even a Jew or a Christian, they can also be a slaughterer as well. Okay, with certain conditions which some other time probably we'll look at it in more detail. So these are the 3 conditions. So just say, for example, if there was a cow or a sheep, and you sacrifice that cow according to the conditions of Sharia, then that cow's skin automatically becomes pure. You don't have to even do dabagat of that particular cow. You don't even have to tan that particular cow's skin. You could just peel the skin off straight away, and if you want to use it, if you want to dry it and then make it into carpets or rugs, make it into coats, that is totally fine, totally permissible. With regards to, and this particular ruling even applies with regards to haram and unlawful animals as well. Such as, just say for example, a tiger. Now it's going to be very difficult, but just say, imagine somehow you manage to get hold of a tiger, you put it to the ground somehow, and you get a knife and you slaughter the tiger. You say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and you slaughter the tiger. So that tiger which is slaughtered, Islamically, even though the meat is unlawful and haram to consume, but the skin of that tiger will automatically be tanned and pure. So therefore you could peel the skin off, and then after that dry it, and then afterwards you could make it into coats, you could make it into rugs, you could make it into carpets, you could make it into whatever. Now with regards to animals which has not been lawfully slaughtered, then obviously, as I mentioned, what you can do is that you can then peel the skin off, and then afterwards you just let it to dry, put some chemicals inside or anything, let it to dry, and then what happens is that when you leave it out to dry, then the sun absorbs the impurity and the najas, and then automatically that particular skin will be lawful and permissible to use. And from here we're going to look at a couple of modern questions here, or contemporary issues. Somebody asked me this question regarding snake boots made out of snake skin. So the answer to that will be that it's permissible. Because obviously, even though that snake, we haven't actually killed it or whatever, but it's obviously been non-Muslims, but what they did afterwards is that they also tanned that skin as well, because obviously they didn't get the skin straight away and just made it into a boot. Obviously they tanned it as well. They probably were more professional about it. They put more chemicals inside and so on. So they tanned it and then they made it into boots. So therefore it's permissible for Muslims to wear that. Similarly, again, somebody asked regarding snake belts made out of snake skins. So again, same thing arises here as well. In tan, so it will be permissible and lawful for Muslims to use. For example, fur coats, the fur from the animal, they've tanned it and then they've worn it, so therefore it is permissible and lawful for Muslims to use. Now, just one particular thing which I just need to mention is there's this kind of leather, and I hope I'm actually pronouncing it correctly. You call it suede, S-E-U-D-E. Suede. Okay, so it's suede. Okay, now suede leather. Now, with regards to suede leather, if you actually check it up on the internet, it actually says that suede leather, the actual suede itself, it can be taken from cows, cattle, and he also says it can also be taken from pigs as well. Now remember one thing, pig skin, you cannot ever make it lawful and pure and pak. Even to the extent that if you were to cut the pig skin and put chemicals inside, leave it out in the sun to dry, even then it still be considered impure and napak, because Allah has created pig in such a way that every single aspect of a pig is najasul ayn, it's filth and impure. So regarding that suede leather, because there's a possibility that it can come from pig skin, so therefore it's advisable that all Muslims, they should abstain wearing from that kind of leather. I think they normally make suits out of that, as far as I know, suede. I think they make suits and everything for, yes, so those kind of leather Muslims should abstain. Because we're not sure, it could be from cattle, but because we're not sure whether it's from cattle or pigs, so therefore it's best and preferable for Muslims to such a type of leather. So if you very quickly have a look at the text, the author says, وَكُلُّ إِحَابٍ, that every skin, dubiga, which has gone under the process of dibagat, which has been tanned, فَقَدْ طَهُرَ, indeed it has become pak. جَازَتِ الصَّلَاةُ فِيهِ, and it is permissible to read namaz on. So for example, those leather or those kind of skin, you then tanned it and you made it into a rug or a prayer mat, you can actually read namaz on that. Al-wudu'u minhu, and even performing wuzu from it is also permissible and lawful as well. Because what would happen in the olden days is that, those skins which they have tanned, they would actually make it into containers. They would actually fashion it into a container. So if any water was stored in there, then to use water in a container for wuzu, that is also lawful and permissible as well. Illa al-khinzir wal-admi, however there is exception, and the exception is besides pigs and human beings. Okay, inshallah, next week's lesson I'll elaborate on it a bit more further, but as I just kind of indicated to you now, with regards to khanzir, because Allah has created pigs and swine, that every single aspect of it is najasul ayn, and it is filth. So you can't, make it pure. Even though you may tan it, it's still going to remain impure and napak. So therefore, you cannot use any aspect of a pig for, even to the extent that to make it into, from the boar bristles of the hair of a boar, to make that into paint brushes and then to use it to paint your house, that is also not allowed as well. That will make the whole house impure and napak, because every single aspect of the pig is impure and najis. And also there is an exception of human beings, admi. Now human beings, they're not napak or impure, but the reason why you cannot use their skin to make into prayer mats or rugs is due to their sanctity and due to their nobleness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created human beings, and out of all the creation of Allah, the most beautiful of Allah, the most dignified of Allah's creation are the human beings. So due to their honor, due to their sanctity, after a human being passes away, to use his skin, to tan his skin, to make it into containers, to make it into prayer rugs, to make it into mats, all these kind of things are not permissible and not allowed in Islam. Inshallah, we kind of elaborate on these again in next week's lesson. With the tawfiq to act upon what's been said. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah. Any questions or?
Be a student of knowledge.